Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome. Briefly today, I don't want to be too long on this because there's actually a lot of information to cover on this specific um, theme here. But we're going to talk about the Greco-Roman influences on the Bible's, on the New Testament, sorry, writers, quite apparently so as well. What they appear to be doing is copying Greek myth. And I know that might sound strange. You might not have heard this before, but the parallel and sequential order of stories in the Gospel of Mark and of Luke and in Acts all actually betrayed themselves as having been written by people who were thoroughly conversant in Greek emulatio and imitatio as well, these two literary styles we find in uh, ancient Greece and Rome specifically. And we can assume, of course, we don't have to assume anymore that the Gospels were written by people who were well versed in Greek, who had nothing to do with anyone close to, or indeed any disciples of any living Jesus. Forget about that. It's nonsense. Never happened. The convergence of evidence actually points to this being far more a later constructions of stories, and this relates well to Titus's second coming as the Messiah, and many of the references we get to in Wars of the Jews to Titus's campaign, and the fact that that mythology, this old Homeric mythology, might well have been used by Josephus to help to augment the story, because it might well have been on his mind. He was a Hellenized Jew, spoke fluent Greek. Um, uh, to help to augment the Titus's biography with his ministry in Judea. So we're just going to have a little look here. I'm going to share my screen with you, lovely people. Here we go. I'm going to have a little read. I'm going to skirt over quite a lot of stuff here, but for various reasons, the Gospels were suitable for the use as a canonized origin story for the Jesus movement. But by modern standards of veracity, they ultimately reveal little about the beginnings they profess to relate. Rather, the Gospels reveal more about the writers who created them and the subsequent generations of readers who have endorsed and perpetuated Christianity's own myth of origins. This is a great book, Robin Faith Walsh, The Origins of Early Christian Literature, Contextualizing the New Testament Within Greco-Roman Literary Culture. And we're going to see, yeah, I mean, feel free at any moment to just freeze these pages and have a little read for yourself. The book, so these books are, they're satirica, really, imperial age satirica in theme. They have anointings, crucifixions, cannibalistic and fraternal last suppers, symbolic resurrections, and empty tombs all make an appearance in one form or other in all ancient Western literature, and of course they are there in the New Testament. One example here includes John 5:19 mentions the Jesus Sabbath healing in baths of Bethsaida, which were recently discovered in Jerusalem. A little a quirky link can be made between this location, which was part of a greater complex attachment to a temple named the Asepion and the Helia goddess Sepius. So this is again, it's a throwback to Greek literature, and this Greco-Roman baths in Jerusalem, and also the obvious connection here we've already been through with Titus Flavius healing two men, one of them with a withered arm, and one of them who was blind by his spit, exactly in the form that Jesus does two of his miracles. It's the emperor that does these miracles before Jesus, according to when the actual accounts in the New Testament come down to us. So this intelligentsia, this bookish intelligentsia, the people who read this stuff, knew about this profound literature, this imitatio, reverent imitation, and imitatio, this competition between writers was often based upon seeing who could outdo one another using this mythic framework. So we're going to see very soon how all of this um, came about. More than 600 Greek fragments prior to 200 CE witness to this kind of writing. A paltry 5 to the Jewish Bible in Greek in the Septuagint. So just a little point of fact, the Jewish Bible wasn't really written down properly until the early BC kind of era. Um, anyway, but this stuff in the Greco-Roman world was huge. Everyone knew about the myths, no matter if you could read or write. You often were told orally about these myths, and those who could read these works would see this complex imitatio and immolatio in use. Um, so I don't really want to read that, but again, you can freeze. What are we going to want to? I want to get down to is the actual um, parallels here. So this is from an essay. It's a fairly long essay, a very good one though. It distills some of Dennis MacDonald's works here. Great scholar, professor, um, and he's the one of the people really who found these links between the epics and Jesus's life. You can read here that Hector refuses wine, mixed wine. Jesus refuses mixed wine, incurable wounds, and this is sequential. Hector recognizes that Apollo abandoned him. Jesus recognizes that God has abandoned him. At his death. Sorry, Hector dies with a shout. Jesus dies with a shout. Achilles gloats over his death, the death of Hector. They fight. Remember, Centurion gloats over Jesus when he's dead. Women watch Hector die from afar. Women watch Jesus died from afar, and on it goes. Now we're going to go to there's this clever rewriting of epic literature to support one's own authority in writing. The objective being to outdo the hypertext, right? So you're playing, you're fighting, you're dueling with these great authors. You're trying to make your own literature. This is again from the Odyssey, I believe. And we have Mark. There's some more references from Mark here, I think. Again, you'll see the links. I will not go through them. They're all there to take a look at. Hercules, the son of Zeus. Jesus, the son of God, spoken. All of this cool stuff. The problem. I'm sorry. I don't really. It's just all there. Now I'm going to do a proper video on this in time to go through it all and take a good little while. But I'm not going to do that today because I don't want to waste too much time. Surely the parallels presented earlier are sufficiently dense and sequential to suggest direct imitation, but even more striking are the unusual motifs that appear in both crises arise during the hero's adventures with the dead. Hera and the demon inflict frothing madness on men they have tormented from their youth. When divine figures intervene, both men fall to the ground and are thought dead. None of these motifs appear in any other New Testament miracle story. They are distinct. A reader aware of Mark's imitation will contrast Jesus's compassion for the man's demon-possessed son with Hera's petulant infliction of madness and Hercules' murder of his family. Criterion 6. So Hercules and Jesus already share a great deal of parallels. If you're into comparative mythology, this will be known to some people. But it goes on. And remember, we don't just see one kind of coincidental, oh, look, these might be coincidences here. We see a hell of a lot of coincidences cropping up again and again, and they are in order. This is by design, ladies and gentlemen. Gerazine, yes, the demoniac. references here, and they go on and on in some degree. They follow an order. I will read from Price here. What are we going to do that? No, we don't need to do that. So it's all rather well attested, yeah. And this is just other stuff now. There is an order behind the order of the stories in the New Testament. Remember, Mark here is explicitly important because Mark is one of the founding Gospels. Matthew, one of the far bigger Gospels, is just copying wholesale from Mark, and at times going off script a bit, of course, and just making his own stories up. But I thought, I think that it's important that we all pay attention to this stuff, because it is very much there. So we have a basis for the stories of Jesus anyway. We don't have to go to Judea. We don't have to follow a great teacher, wise, peaceful teacher who walked around Galilee and did these things in the wilderness. We can just go to Greco-Roman literature and see where they all came from. It is really rather apparent when you read these connections. And I'm sorry, I'm bit cut for time here, but we'll see the relationship here. It's all very clear. Odysseus, Cyclops, Gerasene, demoniac. Again, it's all here. Anyway, so yeah, I'm just going to leave that there. I'm sorry about. I'm just been a bit of a rubbish. There are several false attestations to Jesus that are of note. I mean, yeah, again, Leah's letters to Agbar, letter to Caiaphas, testimony of Pharisees and Phlegon, all of this stuff, letters of Pilate. These are all, and these come later, of course, but they're not helpful at all in trying to flesh out a Jesus in any kind of historical context whatsoever. They are lies, they were fictions created by the church. So much of this was happening. And so, yeah, that's all rather interesting. But I'm going to do a bigger video on this with some nice frills and sparkles and, like good visuals and stuff like this. But just wanted to make people aware of this. So Dennis MacDonald's work is brilliant. He's written multiple books on this. This is not just someone writing a little essay one day with some, offhand, interesting coincidences he might have seen between these texts. This is his life. He is now devoted in his later. He's in his later years now, devoted to really showing people how all of this came about. And remember, we have the Old Testament parallels with Moses and Joshua and so on. So they form one basis. Then you have this stuff in certain of the more specific stories, and getting into the weeds with the actual storytelling. You've got the Titus kind of Christology happening in Luke specifically, but in other Gospels as well. You have various of the end of Jesus's life is told in stories, probably relating to Jesus, Ben and Ananias, a rebel as well, and Judas. We've been through this, so yeah, I just thought I'd let that kind of sit there with people for a while. This is all there. All of these things relate rather well. I haven't gone through any of them. I apologize, but please feel free to freeze this and have a little look for yourselves. Peace and love. I will leave that there. Cool, man. All right.